Hello and welcome to my channel. This is my first video, so I apologize in advance due to the lack of quality and lack of editing that is going to go into this video. Now, about a month ago, my phone died. It had a cracked screen for about a year, but for some reason, this one morning, I put it in my pocket. By the time I got back home, I took it out and the screen went pitch black. This was bad news because no one likes getting the phone broken, but for me, it was also an excuse to finally buy a Pinephone. Pinephones came around at about 2019, and I've been eyeballing them ever since. The idea of a Linux phone is for someone who likes the Linux operating system. It seemed quite appealing. As for me, I decided to go with a low budget and get the Pinephone. Now, I know that the Pinephone Pro came out not that long ago, and it is pretty appealing, but I still went with the older, cheaper version. Now, the original Pinephone, the cheapest you can find, is out of stock, or at least was by the time I bought it. So I decided to go with the second cheapest option. As it stands, just like with desktop Linux, there are many mobile Linux distros. There's things like Mobian or Arch ARM, but I decided to go with Postmarket OS. Now, Postmarket OS seems to have a very dedicated community, and it's based on Alpine Linux, so it's about as minimal as you can get, which I quite like that. And just like with desktop Linux, there's fragmentation among different distros as well as fragmentation among different desktop environments. In this case, they're called interfaces. There's Phosh, which is the one that the Librem 1 team is building based on GNOME. There's Plasma Mobile based on KDE, and then there's sxmo, which is the one I went for. There's, of course, more obscure options, but definitely give them a look if you're interested in something like XFCE on your phone. But they're not as actively, worked on, or at least that's the impression I have from as these options are. Now, sxmo is the one I went with, since back when I first came across their website, I didn't have a Pinephone, but I thought that this was a rather interesting concept. I was already using suckless tools on my daily driven laptop, and this seemed to make a lot of sense for me. I mean, if I wanted like an easy phone experience, much like that offered by Phosh or Plasma Mobile, you could argue that you might as well go for one of those custom ROMs you can get with Android, like Lineage OS or Graphene OS. But I like the idea of configuring my phone down to the level of fine-grained detail that you can do on the Linux desktop. Since the sxmo interface is officially supported by the Postmarket OS team, you can actually find it. You can actually find it as a pre-built image. So you don't. If you're using the Pinephone in particular, I don't know how it is with other phones. You don't need to, install the distro from scratch and do all those tweaks manually or run PM Bootstrap, you can just flash it into your SD card and put it right into your phone. Now, you will notice that if you go through the post-market-OS image repository, they have sxmo this way. Now, why is that? The name sxmo originally stood for Simple X Mobile because it was an interface based on the X windowing system using the suckless tools, DWM, dmenu, and the ST terminal. But as time progressed, they decided to make the move towards Wayland. Now, these seem like an interesting choice. A lot of people are moving into Wayland, so I thought about experimenting with Wayland myself, and I ended up going for that one. Now, it says sxmo this way because Sway is the window manager it uses by default. Sway is an i3 replacement for Wayland. So without further intro, let's get hands on the Pinephone. Now, I'll start by showing you the device itself physically. It's decently sized. I'm not someone with tiny hands. You can sort of see. I forgot the actual screen size, but you can check it out on the website. This is how it looks like on my hands. Now, there's this feature that old phones used to have, that the Pinephone has, that I, as well as other people, was missing, and that is the ability to remove the case. As a matter of fact, they even, this is the default method of using third-party, well, not necessarily third-party, but peripherals with this connector that you gain access to by removing the case and slapping on one of the extra cases. Just like the one with I think there's one with a fingerprint reader, there's one with a physical keyboard, but I might get one of those in the future. There's also the manual switches. That's a feature that's been very much talked about. I don't know if you can see it. The list, what they stand for. There's the modem switch, the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth switch, microphone, rear camera, front camera, and headphone. Now, I guess it's good that, it has that option. I don't see much point, for the headphone one to be there, because you can just, not plug something in. The rest of them, again, it's good to have them, but I don't see myself removing the case and getting some device with a sharp tip to, manually flick those on and off. You can, of course, remove the battery, which is something we miss from old phones, but you need to remove the battery to change the SIM card, which was something that old phones used to have that we did not miss. I don't know why this design decision was taken. Maybe there are some hardware constraints that they had to deal with. I'm no expert on the subject, but I don't know. Maybe it might be the next generation that will change. Now, regarding the phone itself, I of course changed the wallpaper, but you can see this little status menu. That's the one that comes with Sway, but the sxmo team has its way of customizing it. I think the default icons are ones put in by a shell script made by the sxmo team. However, if you open an app let's call them apps like Telegram, you can see that the Telegram icon shows up in the top bar. Now, I don't think the sxmo team has done that on purpose, though it's quite handy to have it there. But it's just the Telegram devs have made it so. So as you've seen before, the app volume key is the way to bring up this main menu, which is the one, it's basically B menu or D menu in case you're in the Xorg, you're using the X windowing system. And it has some handy stuff you would expect on a phone, like the dialer, text, contacts, Bluetooth. The camera is, of course, very low res. I think it's OpenShot, the camera software it uses, but the camera hardware, you could say it leaves a bit, it's decent for the price. I'll say as much. Now, apps, it doesn't have this many by default. These are, many of them are apps I installed myself. It comes with Firefox, the terminal, and W3M and Vim. Now, Vim is the default editor it comes with, but you can obviously install other editors of your liking, like Emacs or New Vim or Viz. And the Vim editor has this thing called the application specific menu or the context menu, which is a B menu or D menu prompt specific to the applications you're running. Not all applications have that by default. Applications, obviously the applications it comes with do have it, but also some that you can install yourself come with it as well. One example being, let's say AERC, the mail client. I haven't configured it yet, but texts are edited via your editor of choice, Vim by default. And you might be thinking, how come Vim on a phone, it sounds kind of hacky, it sounds kind of useless, which I thought so at the beginning at first, but then when I came to use it, I realized it actually comes in really handy, because the modal editing that Vim is known for it's quite handy to use it on your phone, so you can go to a specific part of your document, because otherwise in traditional phone text editors or text input fields, you have to sort of use your thumb or your finger as a cursor, and it's not ideal, but they managed to pull it off with Vim, though I can't say the same for other text-based interfaces like that of Carcass. Carcass doesn't really, at least for me, this is of course opinionated, but it's not that usable on a phone terminal. Now, another aspect you've seen about this phone is the keyboard. Now, you pull it on and off by pressing the down volume key. And the thing with the virtual keyboard is that it's a standalone application in and of itself. So it's not like an Android keyboard where you go into a text input field and it will pop up and then, you know, close whenever you're done with it. It's completely decoupled from it, so you have more control on when it shows up. So far, I've only shown you the bottom way of navigating, but of course, there's also the gestures, which is, you know, at least the ones I memorized. This for the keyboard, and swiping upwards from the bottom right, swiping diagonally from the bottom right corner, you know, changes the phone from the vertical to horizontal mode. I mean, you can, you know, go for the traditional settings that other phones have, which is via using the built-in gyrometer with auto rotate. But, well, you know, I used to turn on auto rotate at first, but I found that, you know, manually controlling when I want to get my screen to rotate is just a better workflow, because, you know, maybe I don't know if resource wise it's saving you know, anything, but sometimes with a traditional phone you rotate it and it takes a while and it doesn't register, or maybe you're lying on the bed and, you know, your head itself is tilted, so the auto rotate function doesn't really help all that much. And what phones tend to do is put a lock switch or a lock toggle into the auto rotate feature, but I find that, you know, just manually controlling when you want your phone to rotate is a much better approach. Now let's go to the web browser. Taking a while to load. As you can see, this is Firefox ESR. The sxmo team, I don't know if it was the sxmo team, but they put the Android user agent by default, so, you know, no website, so websites, you know, assume you're using a mobile to make the web pages more usable, but you can, of course, revert that if you need a desktop browser, because, you know, this is, after all, a desktop operating system. So I open the browser, and I'm now opening a private tab just to force it to open a new window. And this is one of the layouts that it has by default. It's the tab layout, and you can switch between layouts with 2 quick presses on the volume down key, I think it was. Yeah. So this is horizontal, not that convenient. And this is the vertical layout. What you can also do is 3 presses on, I don't know if it was up or down. Let's try with up. Yeah, 3 up volume presses will bring you to the window manager menu, which is, you can, you know, do what you've done previously, but then you can go to the move menu from here. Now, the move menu will move your windows to a different space. Now, let's close that. Now, I have the different the different workspaces with different windows in each of them. Let's close those windows by swiping downwards with 2 fingers. There we go. Now, those just like with any phone operating system, you can use MPD. I mean, not just like with any phone, with any Linux system, you can use MPD to manage your music. I'm doing it the command line way instead of the daemon way, since post-market OS on Alpine Linux doesn't have systemd, it has OpenRC. Now, there is an OpenRC service for MPD, but it reads from, at least by default, it reads from the config folder, the config file in /etc instead of the user level config file. So once that I got MPD running, let's run ncurses music player plus client plus plus. I will never get that name right, no one ever will. So let's try some music. Yeah. Not the best speaker, but you can always plug in and put headphones and, you know, go from there. Sorry, I got interrupted in the process of making this video. The system menu also has a files browser that is, B or D menu based. You can. The files will be opened with XDG open, and you can also tap on Open in Terminal to open a new terminal window with the located in the path of the folder that you were on. Close menu. Now, the odd thing about the contacts is they are stored in a tab separated value file instead of the traditional vcard format. Now, there is some merit to that idea. I'm guessing the sxmo team was opinionated on that, and that is the fact that vcard is not fully standardized, a mess to deal with, and some would argue bloated, which it is true, but the downside is that with this formatting, you can only store one name and one phone number per contact. You can't have multiple phone numbers nor an email address for for the contact in question, which you might not always need to, but that is a feature you will miss unless you are willing to install an extra contact utility that uses the vcard format, and also to sync it with any web DAV or car DAV service, like those you would find at those that the Gmail would give you, or maybe you have a self-hosted one like Radicali. But anyways, next item on the list will be the scripts menu. Now, by default, it doesn't have those at the top without an icon. Those are some I added myself. I got them from different sources and put them up there. The ones it comes with is the record script, which starts voice recording, the file browser I shown you earlier, a Reddit browser, which I don't think it works quite well, at least last time I tried it. You know, it has these subreddits by default. And well, you know, you can see this D menu interface doesn't really do it justice on a phone because you can't really see what's going on. And once you open one, you get this pipe URL. You will find this pipe URL menu in other scripts. It's just you know, a URL handler for choosing which browser to open it with, or a MPV if it happened to be a video. Now this behaves in a similar manner to the RSS script. Now the RSS script will fetch given a specific time range starting from the January the 1st of 1970, which I think is Unix times 0. So, you know, in relative terms from the beginning of time. So let's say 3 hours. Now I didn't put any of these subreddits in. These are the ones it comes with, and once again we face the same issue of, you know, the way they chose to lay them out. You know, it doesn't really allow you to read the entirety of the title. You just, you know, it cuts to the right. And also, you know, there's no way to make it, I mean, there probably is a way, everything is scriptable here, but by default, you get a universal feed, not one, you know, per specific feed. And this script is based on the S feed, RSS, I wouldn't call it RSS reader, but RSS parser, which is a utility that's featured in the suckless.org website. You know, I don't think it's maintained by the Suckless team, but it's featuring the rocks category, or the rocks section of the website, I think, which basically all it does is it grabs RSS feeds and pulls the URLs into a tab separated value file. Now, next thing we're going to look at will be notifications. Now, I'm going to try to force I'm trying to get a text. So I ended up using my old iCloud account. I couldn't get Telegram to force Telegram to send me a text. So as you probably noticed, you heard the noise. You see this little green LED is lit up. So if I go to notifications, I will see my two-factor authentication SMS text, and it's some form of pager in the terminal. And yeah, that's a basic walkthrough of what my findings have been using this phone. I have tried to get Waydroid to work, to, you know, be able to run Android apps on the phone, particularly to run WhatsApp, because, you know, the country I'm from is very reliant on WhatsApp Messenger. Unfortunately, I could not get it to work. So I've been pretty much disconnected, so to say, for a while. I've tried other ways. I tried, you know, getting a matrix server and bridging WhatsApp to it, and, you know, it works, but, you know, I've been also picking at other approaches, like trying to get a Pigeon plugin, because luckily, it used to be different, but luckily you no longer need a phone running WhatsApp in order to use WhatsApp Web. You just need a phone to configure it and to log into WhatsApp with that phone or VM once a fortnight. Now, another interesting feature of the Pinephone, or mobile Linux, is that since it's a Linux system just like any other, you can SSH into it. So I'm now SSH'd into my machine. As you can see, I can ls or maybe lf to see my files. I can go to the config directory and maybe edit edit the configuration files instead of doing it directly on the phone, because it's probably probably more sane way to do it, because frankly as much as Vim on a phone is very cool, not very usable for doing something other than writing a small text or running a small tweak. Now, something else that I found interesting is that the menu has an incursive interface. So when you're using SSH, you can do something like this. So as you can see now, I'm on this is the same menu I would get via B menu, but it's running inside a terminal text user interface. Now, all of these programs that my tab completion has shown, all of these shell scripts, are basically the very core of sxmo. They are the glue that stitches it all together, because you can't really call sxmo a desktop environment because it uses an external tool like Sway or DWM. I would guess a more appropriate way of calling it would be a suite of tools. So, we can check so you can, see the shell scripts as they modify them if you happen to find something that you think would be a saner default for everyone else to have, it wouldn't be a bad idea to contribute to the sxmo team. So anyway, that was it. That was my video on my first thoughts on sxmo. I know it's not the best YouTube video out there. I'm not a great communicator. Maybe I'll get better with time if I make more videos. I do also have a laptop, a ThinkPad running Alpine Linux, and a VPS running Alpine Linux as well. If you're interested in that, I can make some content with those machines and what configurations I use. Anyways, thanks for your time. Comments appreciated. Have a nice day.